What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome back to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Augie Johnston, and I'm here with my partner, Alex Engel, and today we are going to be actually recording our 52nd episode, so one full year. So we're going to do some reflecting today. We're going to talk about the past year and all these different episodes on so many different topics and so many different coaches and players and pro players and college players that we've had on, some of the best things that we've learned from them. So this is going to be a whole year's worth of knowledge put into one episode, so you'll want to stick around. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Spotify, you can subscribe there as well. We're on iTunes. We're everywhere. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. All right, you guys, top 10 tips that we've learned from coaches over the past year and also from players. And like we said, we've had no NBA players, but we've had some Division I players, NAIA players, overseas players, and then college players at all the levels. So it's been a good mix. So Alex, I'll go ahead and let you start off, and you can name your 5 things that you remember from the past year. And this is the 52nd episode, so I think it feels good. And you can go ahead and give your little spiel about the 52nd episode if you'd like as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool that we've finally got to this point. For anyone that has followed us from the beginning, we've learned new things doing this podcast. Hopefully, I feel like we've improved on it as well. And if anyone is listening in, hopefully they feel the same. But just it's been a cool experience to meet and learn about the game of basketball from so many different areas. And I know, when we first started, our very first guest was my friend CE. And, shout out to CE for kind of starting it off. And from there, we just kind of branched out. And some of the guests that we've had on are people that we know. And some of the guests that we've had on are people that we really didn't know. And they were a friend of a friend. And, for all the coaches that have come on here and all the players and anybody who's joined us, I really appreciate it. I'm sure Og feels the same, because that's one of the biggest things about this. And I think at the time that we started it during the pandemic, when everybody was so disconnected and everybody was so isolated, and this was a way we were able to kind of like reconnect with people. And I just think it's been a cool experience, and I hope that we can keep growing and keep learning, because I know for sure it's helped me. I've definitely stolen some stuff from coaches. I know you've said you've taken some things as well. And, yeah, just, this ability to connect on here is really nice. It's something that you couldn't do 10, 15, 20 years ago as easily.
Yeah, that's definitely true. All right, let's go ahead and get into the show. So you're gonna give your 5, I'll give my 5. If we can, we'll name drop. If not, we'll keep it pushing. So go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, so whittling this down to 10 tips from this past year was definitely not easy. We were definitely scouring through all the episodes, like, man, what are we going to do here? I'm sure there are some really great ideas and tips that we probably left off. So we apologize to anybody listening that's like, hey, what do you mean? I said this 5 episodes ago. You didn't leave that in there. But yeah, we've definitely got a lot of good info. But some of the 5 that stuck around with me, the first one came from Coach Mark Barikov. And we had an episode talking with him about how to measure and build a successful program. And one of the things that he said is a lot of people think of success just as simply winning and losing. And when he is trying to, or what he thinks is success, is like how his players are and how they do when they leave the program. Like, he wants to see them 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, when they're successful, they've got a good career, they've got a family, they're taking care of themselves. That to him is creating a successful program. And from that, he feels like if you build that culture and that type of identity within the program, you are more likely to also be successful on the court, because you're getting these high character individuals that are responsible and taking care of things that need to be taken care of, and that will translate and reflect on the court as well. So that was one of the first ones that came to mind for me.
Okay, very nice. There's so many ways to measure success, and that's definitely a great one. And I think that's definitely in the best interest of the players. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's keep this list going. Oh, you want to go ahead and follow up? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of times we get caught up in like wins and losses. And I know I definitely have done that in the past, where I think, like, I know when I was younger, I definitely only thought wins and losses were the thing. And as I'm growing and, coaching more years, I've realized that basically what Coach Barikov was saying is true. the success on the court is great, but there's so much more to it than that. So that was our first one there. The second one was from Coach Iona. He talked about the kind of the brotherhood of coaching on his episode. We had talked about how he had moved up the ranks. He moved to a lot of different colleges and a lot of different schools, and that he was still able to stay in touch with all of his ex-coaches, and he was still close with them, and he followed up with them. And then it was kind of this brotherhood, which again, I think a lot of times people view leaving a school as a negative thing and like, oh man, we don't talk anymore, or, like, oh, I have to leave, and kind of like, not disgrace, but like it's just a negative feeling, I feel like, a lot of times. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You can leave somewhere on a good note. I understand sometimes people leave on bad notes, but in his case, he left to pursue better opportunities, and the people that he worked with were supportive of him and wanted him to do well. And, I would hope that that's how it would be for most or all coaches. So that was another one that stuck out to me. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add there.
No, nothing to add, but yeah, the brotherhood of basketball in general is a huge thing. As a player, right? You have your player brotherhood. I can see how there's a coaching brotherhood too.
Yeah. And I think the higher up you get, the smaller that circle gets too, which is another interesting thing. So the next one was from the Division I episode on women's basketball, with Din and Lynn LePepe. They talked to us about, their experience playing at Cal Poly and then currently both playing overseas. And they talked about their work ethic. And one of the things that really, a good tip that stuck out to me was they basically were willing to do whatever it took to get to where they wanted to be. They got up at 6 a.m., got shots up, ran the track. I remember saying, Mom used to make me run the track. I remember, like, run a mile every day or something along the lines of that. Partner shooting after practice, like doing all those little details where it's like, hey, if you really want to be this D1 athlete or you want to be this great player, like, that's what it takes. And it's not just words. Like, they didn't just say, oh yeah, we should go do this. Like, they were actually out there every day doing that. And I think that's a tip that really a lot of younger players that want to reach that level, even if they just want to be a good high school player, like, they need to see that it takes a lot of dedication and time. It's not just, I'm going to show up and I'm the best player, So I thought that was another good tip that people could use. So that one, and then let's see, our fourth one that I had was being an assistant, and this was from Coach Cobb, who's at University of Montana, and he talked about being an assistant at the lower level and how it can give you a wider tool set. So again, kind of going back to this idea of like D1, everybody wants to be a D1 coach, but he actually started at a D2, got this wide skill set, being able to recruit, being able to do academic study hall, being able to get on the floor and coach, film, all those different things he had to have his hands in. And so now that he's at the D1 level, he's very multifaceted and, desired as a coach, where sometimes you get caught going to a D1, you're not caught, but you go to a D1 school and you only do one thing and all you know is recruiting and that's all you can do. Well, if you don't have a school that needs someone that can recruit, it may be hard for you to move on, to a different school or to move up the ranks if that's all you know. So just that multifacetedness and being willing to start at a lower level and work your way up, I thought that was kind of cool as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely something all coaches should consider, is spending some time as an assistant for sure somewhere, and then learning.
Yeah. And I know for me, that was big when I was an assistant at JUCO. And even that year I did at Poly, like, it helped me a lot. I wouldn't be able to know some of the stuff that I'm doing now if I hadn't already done it, at a previous place. So, and then the last one there was was from CE, like I mentioned, our first guest, talking about overseas basketball and how it's not always glamorous, and people always view professional sports as this glamorous thing. And yes, there are leagues that are like that, but oftentimes it's not, and it can be a grind. And if you don't have the right fit for the type of play that you want to play in or the type of team that you want to play with, it may not be as fun as you thought. And a lot of guys, and I know you know this personally, but a lot of guys go home early. They don't make it out there very long, or they may have even been a really good college player and they get out there for a year or two and that's it. And that's the end of their pro career because they can't handle all the other stuff, being away from home, different practice schedules, different time schedules. So even if you are able to talk to people at home, it might have to be like 3 a.m. for you and, afternoon for them. All those things are tough. Speaking a different language, you may be somewhere where nobody speaks your language. There's a lot of things that can make it difficult. So that was just another tip there is, hey, make sure if you're going to go overseas, you understand it's not like you're going to the NBA where they're catering for everything and you're living in the US and, everything is nice. It might be kind of difficult.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. And I think as overseas basketball becomes more of an option and more with the internet and everything, people are starting to finally maybe learn that it's not a glamour. But I remember, I didn't play super long time ago, but that it was definitely the perception when I was playing that it was like some glamour thing, but it's a grind over there.
Hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, those are some really good ones. And yeah, there was, like you said before, there were so many more we could have done, but we're going to try to keep this to 10. And I'll go ahead and talk about some of mine. And the first one that I want to talk about is actually one that, not every episode we didn't have a guest on. And a lot of times it was me and Alex, we're going back and forth. And it seemed in a lot of our conversations, the word emphasis came up a lot. And so I remember one time we were talking about maybe how do you teach intangibles, I think, or something like that, something along that line. And you were talking about, diving on the ground drill, like that you would have every player have to dive on the ground however many times. And then also we were talking about taking charges and stuff, and like, hey, you can do a couple drills. It's not like you need to take charges every day or practice diving on the ground every day, but you do it like once or twice, and there's an emphasis there, and then it helps your team actually do those kind of things where if you just don't take the time to do it once or twice a year, take a charge drill, they're never going to take a charge. You just put a little emphasis there, and there it goes. So that's number one for me.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we'll give Alex credit for that one. I like that. And the next one I'm going to talk about came from Taylor and Connor, who it was kind of like our Division III basketball episode. And believe it, they're brothers. Obviously, you know that, Alex. But and they both went to D3. So that's why it was a pretty cool episode. You should check it out if you haven't listened to it. And one of them had a really great experience as far as like, yeah, it was a D3. So you're thinking like, oh, what is it like going to a D3? Well, it was really actually a really cool college experience for him. He was in Texas. They both were. And, he said that he went to all the volleyball games, all the athletes went to all each other's games. Although it was a small school, it was still like kind of like the high school sports environment. And then his brother Connor had went to a school which just wasn't like that. It was more of a commuter school, but definitely a good program and good basketball, but he didn't have that same experience. So all in all, the thing that I learned from that is like, yeah, there's options to go D3 at a high school and NAIA at a high school and JC at a high school. And when you are making those decisions and you decide to go to one of those schools, like also take into consideration what kind of experience is it? Is it good for basketball, good for your, basketball and academics? And I guess the third element is experience, basketball, academics wise, and then experience, which I just never thought of before.
Yeah. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things that when I do hear stuff about recruiting or maybe like a situation where things go bad, I do often hear like, hey, pick a school that is the right fit, not necessarily just because it has the big name or, whatever it is. Because if it's not the right fit, even if they're a good program, then you're not going to be happy and you're not likely to last.
Right. Like choosing between a D1 and a D2. We're like, I go to this D1 right here. They're not going to win any games. The coach might get fired. Or I can go D2 to where I'm going to become an all conference player, possibly, blah, blah, blah. There's a decision-making process there for sure. Okay. It's fun to reflect back. The next one is this is going to be basically a shout out to all the coaches or many of the coaches that we've interviewed. I asked a lot about transition offense throughout the past year. I'd say, what's your transition offense look like? You got a rim runner, what are you doing? And come to find out, yeah, every single coach that I asked, they do have something in place and they practice it often. And I think that this is more of a new thing, that transition offense is maybe a larger emphasis than back in the day. People were walking it up, maybe scoring less. Now it's kind of the opposite. It's like flipped. You better have a transition offense game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
think that, like you said, the game has changed so much that you have to have something in, even if it's just something basic, you got to have something in, because there are still some teams that walk it up, but it's not as common anymore. And it can be difficult to compete with teams if you don't have some type of transition offense in.
Yeah. Giving up points there for sure. Okay. The next one was something I learned from Coach Becker, who is the head coach at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And he was talking about an offensive rebounding system that they were going to be implementing. And I'd heard somebody mention the name, so I was kind of familiar with it, but he kind of broke it down, and I learned it, and I was planning on using it this year. It's basically when the shot goes up, everyone just runs into the paint. They run in, you try to take your man inside and push your guy in, push him in, and create a 50-50 rebound situation. And if you don't get it, you can match up into man. So that was a cool little system that I learned, and I plan on implementing that someday. But this year with COVID and limited practice time, that's one thing that I was like, nah, I can't spend too much time on that.
Yeah, that you definitely gonna have to spend, I feel like, a couple months really working on that one to get it right, because there is a little risk of like they could get transitioned the other way if you're not doing it correctly.
Yep. And I might have put it in and not liked it because it's a little bit different, right? And then wasted all that time. So I wasn't about to do that. But yeah, that was a good episode. Check that one out if you haven't seen it. And then the last one comes from Ridge Shipley, who is a trainer and someone that we actually both know personally. And he was talking about ball handling, actually, and how he became a great ball handler. And, you know, Ridge in high school was on a Ball is Life video, and lately he's been popping up on more Ball is Life videos in like the street ball realm. And he was talking about how if you want to get good at dribbling, just start at a young age. That's probably one of the biggest keys, is the earlier you start, the better you'll be, and that it's going to actually pay off a lot. And so, you know, I definitely think that no matter what sport your kid plays, I mean, dribbling a basketball, they could always, that's a good skill to learn, I think, in the earlier days, obviously passing, catching, dribbling. So I'm definitely going to get my kid out there bouncing the ball.
Yeah, I think it's just setting that foundation. And obviously you can do that with a lot of skills, but basketball is one where if you are limited, I mean, obviously if you're limited on shooting or anything else, it can hurt you as well. But dribbling, like if you can't move with the ball, it makes it hard to play the game, you know, and you're going to turn the ball over a lot. If you get pressured and you can't handle that at all, you're going to turn the ball over a lot against teams that really pressure high. So I do think that, I'm not saying dribbling is the most important skill, but I think it's like one of the most important skills to start really early. Because once you build that foundation, it's just so much easier to build off of compared to like maybe a kid who doesn't dribble much and then they finally take it serious in middle school. And like at that point they've built bad habits or just things just aren't quite the same. So I think the sooner you can get into it, the better.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's all the skills. Here's another thing you can add to that. It's like nowadays it's different. Like you can't, it's more rare, I would say, for somebody to say, oh, I just started playing basketball in my junior year of high school. You know, like these club programs are dialed in. Kids are getting reps at a younger age. Training has changed the game. You know, now there's more resources available to people that want, you know, to get better at a younger age. So definitely it's a competitive thing. I mean, I feel like some sports it's not like that, but with basketball, it definitely is. Like people just want to be basketball players, and football players and baseball players as well too.
Yeah, there's a lot more specialization compared
Mm-hmm.
to maybe 20 years ago where you had more players playing multiple sports growing up. And not that people don't do that still, but it's just, you're right. It is definitely more specialized. Some people argue it's actually hurting parts of these sports because, you know, I've heard the argument that specialization makes actually for a worse athlete, because if you're a multi-sport athlete, your body is used to doing multiple things. And so you're, you know, better balance, better coordination, like that type of stuff. And I kind of agree with that to an extent. Like I do think you got to have your one main sport if that's what you really want to be. Maybe that's the one where you play club or where you spend, you know, a lot of time in. But I think it's also good to dabble in other sports as you're growing up, especially at least until, I mean, I think up until almost middle school, you could probably do it. High school, I get it. There are people that would even say, hey, high school, you should still play 3 sports. I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong, but I can understand like in high school being like, no, I'm just going to focus on one now if you really want to go, you know, play at a certain level. But I also know people that have played multiple sports and gotten D1 scholarships. So I don't know if there's a right answer on that, but I think, I do think it's good to play a lot of sports at a young age, and it just makes you more well-rounded as an athlete.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I feel like soccer will help you with your footwork, you know, and your endurance and all kinds of stuff. And then, you know, baseball can help your throwing.
Hand-eye
you know,
coordination.
hand-eye coordination. Like I know the baseball players can always make money passes. You know, they can snap a pass, frozen rope. Football player, that's that physicality. You know, there's all. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so much you can get from playing multiple sports.
Yeah. And I think coordination, just overall coordination with your body, which I think is a really underrated ability. Like you talk about good athletes and we always think of how high can you jump or how strong are you or maybe even how quick you are. But coordination is an athletic ability as well. And a kid that never drops a pass, that can catch a pass from anywhere, that can, shoot, just everything mechanically is perfect all the time. Like that is I don't know if you consider that a skill or athletic ability, almost like a mix of both, but that type of ability to be super coordinated makes you a better player. You're going to not lose the balls often. You're going to be able to do things with the basketball, dribbling wise. If you're more coordinated, you can do things with the ball that someone who's not as coordinated can't do. So I think coordination is really kind of an undervalued thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's why some kids, their parents are like, you got to play sports. You got to play sports. But if you're not coordinated, it's going to be a challenge for you to play sports. Like that's kind of a requirement, but you can work on it by, like we said, start at that young age, develop that coordination. So, All right. Well, I think episode 52 is almost in the books. That's all we got for you guys this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked today's episode and are watching on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can subscribe there as well. We come out with a new episode once a week. Episode 52. Anything else, Alex, you got to say?
Hey, we got 52 more episodes next year. Let's keep this ball rolling.
All right. I like it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Peace.